working with Dr. Travis Atkinson in the computer science department in his research lab, working on using convolutional neural networks for parking lot occupancy detection. In case you're not familiar, I'm going to define some terms for you. The first thing you need to know is what a convolution is. It's a mathematical combination of functions. So given two functions, say a and b, we know if we evaluate them at any given point, we know what pops out of the function. So a convolution operation will take those two functions and extract a third, calling it c, in that we can extract information from merging the two functions together. The next is a neural network, which is a multi-layer computation graph. In the neural networks, we will apply these convolution operations to extract information from different nodes and then finally get a result from the neural network. I'll quickly walk you through an example of what a convolutional neural network does. Right here, a convolution operation is applied to this segment of a boat. And the convolution operation, remember, merges information. So it takes this larger image of a boat and compresses it down into this smaller image. Then later on, it once again applies a convolution operation to compress the image. And then finally, it goes through a fully connected neural network. So the reason we use convolutional neural networks over fully connected neural networks for images is because convolution operations will shrink the size of the image. If you have an HD resolution image, it might be 1920 by 1080 pixels with three layers, which is red, green, and blue for the pixel values. There could be billions of computations in the network. So by using these convolution operations, we can compress the image down and retain most of the information, and then use a fully connected network that possibly has millions of computations instead of billions. The problem we're facing with parking lots right now is that they can get really crowded if we don't have some management system in place. If you look at the two images, they're available spaces, but some people are parked illegally or parked crooked, and it's hard to really manage that kind of parking lot if you just allow people to freely drive in and out. So the current solutions to these problems are parking barriers and ground sensors. Parking barriers are great. They work great for things like parking decks, but there are some problems with them. First of all, if the barrier doesn't come down quickly enough, multiple cars can go through at once, and it records one car entering the deck when really two came through the deck. Ground sensors are a little bit better because they detect each space individually, but they're really expensive. They can cost upwards of $100 per sensor, and you have to install them in each space and maintain them. Some researchers in 2013 decided they wanted to use images to solve this problem instead of relying on sensors or gates. PKLOT is a robust data set for parking lot classification. It contains 695,900 images. And in each image, they manually labeled each vehicle. This can be used by convolutional neural networks to predict if there's a car occupied in each space or not. In 2015, another set of researchers decided that they wanted to extend the data set and use more modern computer vision techniques. CNR parking was collected in 2015 using a variety of cameras, camera angles, weather conditions, and times of day. It's an additional 150,000 images. But the difference is that each spot is not labeled individually as a car. Each parking spot is labeled individually, and then it's simply a matter of detecting whether there's an object in the space or not. Some problems that this comes with, though, are that the object in the space might not actually be a vehicle. It could be a person, and it would detect that the space was occupied for a brief moment. So if you were using this on a live video feed, it may incorrectly display information every so often. So if there are some problems with labeling the data and perhaps some inaccuracies with videos and images, why use it? Well, it's cheap. You can use one camera to monitor dozens of spaces rather than using dozens of sensors to monitor dozens of spaces. So it shares that similarity with the parking gate in that you put one entry point and then you have that exit point. It's fairly simple because most buildings, at least on the University of Alabama campus, have video cameras on top of them. So a lot of the infrastructure is already in place, which means you could deploy your convolutional neural net onto these cameras to just monitor the parking lots like they are already. But what are some drawbacks? There's some labor involved, just like with installing ground sensors, in that you have to invest significant amounts of time into the research, hand labeling the data, and then validating and training your model. It's also not as versatile with what we've seen with PK lot and CNR parking, because each parking lot is just that. It's for one individual parking lot. So to expand to other parking lots, you have to go through and relabel each individual space. That's where we came up with our idea to use state-of-the-art object detection. We've made lots of advancements in computer vision in the past 4 years since the CNR parking data set was released, and one of those advancements is YOLO V3. It's a real-time video and static image object detector. It's lightning fast and it's super accurate. You can see in this image that it's able to detect multiple objects that are overlapped on top of each other. So we thought to ourselves, why not use this for our monitoring system? What we can do is we can leverage the past research in PK lot and CNR parking by a method called transfer learning. Transfer learning is where you initialize your network with the weights that correspond to previous training data. So we could train our data on PK lot and CNR parking. It would be able to accurately recognize those vehicles, and then we initialize our data set, our neural network for our data set to train on with those weights. So training is faster and perhaps more accurate because the data is not as biased towards one type of vehicle or one type of parking lot, weather condition, time of day, etc. So our methodology is to capture images from UA building cameras, and then we train the YOLO V3 object detector on each image to diversify our data set. So you might be thinking to yourself, that sounds a lot like CNR parking and PK lot. They had to manually label the images and then train their network and detect an output. But where this differs is you only ever train once. So once you've labeled these vehicles and you train your neural network, it can detect the objects in real time once it understands what the cars look like. It understands what a busy parking space looks like as opposed to a free parking space. So in this way, we can train our model, and it will be able to detect parked vehicles in any parking lot, as long as we have enough variety of data. These are our preliminary results. You can see in this parking lot that it's able to detect many busy and free spaces. One important thing I want to point out is that it's not always easy to figure out what direction to go in terms of improvement. You can see here that it detects an obviously difficult to detect free space behind a parked vehicle, but it doesn't detect this parked car in the background with less visual obstruction. So what do we do in this case? We need to use more training data. I only labeled and annotated 3 images from the parking lot we used for this data. Now that provided several hundred thousands of training images because we used data augmentation and each patch of each vehicle, but it's only 3 images. It didn't account for sunny weather, rainy weather, night, or day. It didn't use different types of parking lots. It did, however, use previous results from PK lot and CNR parking to diversify our data set, but we just need more. Next up, we want to detect more object classes. So instead of just figuring out if a parking space is busy or not, what if we could detect if it's busy and it's a car? What if we could detect if it's busy and it's a truck? And using that information, we could extract whether a vehicle is occupying 2 or more spaces at once, which solves one of the problems that we were facing at the beginning of the presentation. And next, we want to generalize to more parking lots. Our images were captured from the Cyber Hall building video camera to point at their lot, but we might like to use it at the Ferguson Student Center, which is a very popular place to park. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Was there a specific reason that you chose to use the parking lot behind Cyber Hall as opposed to a different parking lot?
We chose to use the parking lot behind Cyber Hall simply because we had access to the camera on top of it, and it would be great. It was a great prototype for integrating this new research with infrastructure that was already in place.